if I take this out up here?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. My name's Chris. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I always mention that I'm an addict as well because I have a very addictive personality for everything, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or anything else that we can think of. Is that okay, sound guy? Okay, because Mike said last week, nobody ever talks in AA like this, so, okay. Sorry. I'm supposed to stand up here and tell you guys what it was like, what happened, and how it is now. At my home group in Kansas City, I just moved here from Kansas City about almost 3 months ago now. We would celebrate every Sunday for people's birthdays throughout the week before. So on the Sunday when I got to speak every year, I spoke with 5 different people that had birthdays the same week, right? It was always the same 5 guys, and we always got up there. I'm telling you that because if I run out of things to say in about 10 minutes, that's because I'm usually only speaking for about 10 minutes, okay? All right, enough of that. I have a photograph, it's now digital in my phone and other places that has me at 6 months old, December, Christmas time, propped up with a nice little Santa Claus sleeper with a bottle of bourbon under my arm. And it was real funny. Everybody liked that, and they laughed and they joked. And back in those days, if your kid was teething, or your kid had colic, or your kid was cranky, then you gave them some bourbon. Whether you just smeared it on their gums, or you put a little bit in their bottle, like my grandfather did when my mom wasn't looking. My point is that that was the norm back then. I don't think they all realized at the time that they were creating the monster that I became in later times. That's not to say that I didn't make choices that put myself here, but I just wanted you to know that I came by this honestly. Okay, when my grandfather died in 1986, 1992, 17 of his 18 grandkids showed up to his funeral with major hangovers, and I was the only one that didn't. When we were kids, we used to have a lake house down in the Ozark Mountains, and my dad had a cabin, my uncle had a trailer, my grandfather had a cabin, and we go there every weekend during the summer, and sometimes we spend all summer down there, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks down there as a big family. The way that it worked down there is that when we were 8, 9 years old, we'd get to go fishing with Grandpa, and we'd drink beer on the boat, because that's all he would bring with us for fishing at 6 o'clock in the morning. When you became 9 and 10 years old, when they started running out of beer, they would send the cousins up to the outpost on the dirt roads in the station wagon to get more beer and cigarettes. So by 10 and a half years old, me and my 5, 6 cousins are going up to the outpost to buy 4 or 5 cases of beer and a carton of cigarettes. And that was all fun and games. We get back, and the cousins, my cousins were older than me. They weren't a lot older. They were all within 4 or 5 years of each other. So we're all still under 13 years old, 14 years old. We get back with, after buying 5 cases of beer, and we just drop off 4. And we'd put one down at the dock for us. We'd go down later on that night, shoot off fireworks, and drink beer. That's what we did all summer long. It was fun. We had fun doing it. It was no big deal. Nobody had any problems with it. We didn't have any issues. Nobody lost their job or anything like that. In 1976, my youngest brother died, and for a lot of different reasons, I had a lot of guilt and anger and a lot of emotions tied up with his death. He was 7 years old. I was 11. That same summer, I smoked my first joint, and that was pretty nice, because guess what I didn't feel anymore? I didn't feel that anger. I didn't feel that guilt. I didn't feel anything really. I felt it really good. Felt really good. When you tie that in with the beers and the booze, that made it even better, right? Didn't have to feel any of that stuff. So I started making choices early that if I did these things, then I wouldn't have to feel these things. And that's how I started my teenage years. That was the same summer I got my first fight. Beat the crap out of this kid because he said, "Hey, I heard your brother died this summer." And I just wailed on him, just beat the living crap out of him. I'm proud of that. However, this summer was kind of a turning point for me. Drugs, alcohol, fights. Can we see a pattern starting here at 11 years old? Okay. And that pattern continued to stay a pattern. In fact, it got to be worse. When I was 16 years old, my dad and mom got divorced right after my brother died. So those other years, my mom was a single mom nurse that worked nights. She worked nights. She went to work at 10:30 at night and came home at 7 a.m. I don't know if anybody here can picture what happens between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. for a teenager that's drinking and drugging. Yeah. So I used to pick up her car. I used to come home at 8 o'clock at night, wake mom up, get her a pot of coffee. Oh, you mind if I drive you to work tonight? Oh, no, that's fine. Drive mom to work, drop her off, 10:30. The only condition I had was I had to be there to pick her up at 7 a.m. That's all the condition I had. And she'd have to call me 5 or 6 times to try and wake me up after getting in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, completely wasted and blasted out. Those were my teenage years, all the way through high school. And my mom used to say, "Chris, I really think you need to talk to somebody. I'm gonna take you to somebody and we're gonna talk." I was like, "Bullshit." This is the life, man. I got a car, I got money, I got booze, I got drugs. I don't need anything else. Turns out, and I wasn't very observant apparently, because around this time, looking back, my mom had about 14 years sobriety. And she tried and tried. She really wanted me to get in and talk to her friends. And I was like, hell no, that's not my bucket. Things started progressively getting a little bit more intense later. When I was 18, my cousin and I used to drive from Kansas City to St. Louis, about a 4-hour drive, or 2.5-hour drive the way we were driving, to pick up cocaine. Real cheap at the time. We could turn it and get a lot of money and be all right. We'd do this 2 or 3 times a week. We did that for about 6 months. The next thing I know, it turns out the drug dealer that we were dealing with turned up dead. Nobody knew why, nobody knew anything. They knew us because we had been in and out doing things, and it kind of freaked me out quite a bit because I was really not in the mood to be on somebody's list of suspects or rivals or any number of stupid things that could go through somebody's head. So I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. So I joined the Navy. Like, I'm going to join the Navy, and I won't drink, I won't drug, I can't do any drugs in the Navy, and it'll all be okay. And it turns out that the drug dealer, 2 of his friends they found floating in a lake about 6 months later after I was in the Navy, so I'm glad I left. But that geographical change didn't help. My squadron used to buy kegs on Friday nights, which is great because you get off work at 4 o'clock, you drink until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, then you go drinking for the weekend. I was a corpsman in the Navy, which is kind of like a nurse. And on the ship, for my squadron, there's a squeak up here. I don't know if you guys can hear that. If it is, I'm sorry, I'm moving around. On the ship, I was a corpsman, and this was 1987, 86, 87 time frame. The military was really into this dropping UAs, random urinalysis. We're just going to start picking people randomly and stuff like that. So I was the guy on the ship that all my squadron and most of the people come to for Lasix. Lasix is a medication that's a diuretic. It makes you urinate. And If you've got a piss test coming up in 3 days, then you want to try and pee as much. So I was trading cocaine for Lasix. Cocaine's out of your system in 3 days, okay? So I thought it was a great system. The whole time I was in the Navy, I was still fighting. I was an angry person. Very angry when I got drunk. Angrier still if I was doing crystal or cocaine. And I hung around with friends who would get drunk and do the same drugs I would, but they would start fights and then they would run away. And then I was there to, let's finish this up. That was no way to live in any way, shape, or form. I had my commanding officer called me into her office one time and she said, Duncan, you've been in the Navy for 17 months and you've been in the emergency room 19 times. And I said, it wasn't my fault. None of them were my fault. They all swung first, you know. I never talking about stitches and broken fingers and bones and multiple stitches and concussions and all these things. And I just blew it off, cracked up, and she laughed and we all laughed and it was all okay. One of my 3-month deployments, we were out on the ship and got back. And I don't know how or why, but that 3 months I didn't really do a lot on the ship. Usually we had the guy down the spillway that had a tequila bar in his rack. Another guy would do cocaine or crystal down here. Another guy had gin. You could get whatever you really wanted on the ship. For some reason I didn't partake too much this trip. And the day we got off the ship, we got out downtown San Diego, Coronado Island rather. And that's the last I remember. I had a pocket full of money. We went to Ocean Beach and we started doing shots. I was told some weird shots that I would never imagine drinking. Sambuca and peppermint schnapps. It's called a snowshoe. I'm like, what the hell is that? Who fed me that, number one? Number two, why would I drink it? Anyway, 3 days later, I woke up in the hospital. And people were starting to fill in this story of what happened, right? Apparently, when I got to the hospital, the doctors said to me, you need to stop fighting us because we don't think you're ever going to walk again. I had broken my neck at C5 and C6, which is actually fractured C5 and herniated C6. Herniation means that the bone had moved forward onto my spinal cord and had paralyzed me. This is the same injury location that Christopher Reeves had. If you guys remember old Superman, he broke his neck there and was paralyzed from the neck down until he died. Had to have a respirator, the whole thing. So when I woke up 3 days later, they were screwing in bolts in the side of my head, and all I heard was this screws into bone, deep into viscera. And it just really, and I can remember that sound right now to a perfect tone. But they were saying, you're not going to walk again. And if surgery isn't exceedingly successful, you might be on a ventilator. And there's a good chance you could die in surgery. And I was like, there's no way. What the hell? I don't even know what happened. And I still have no clue for those 3 days what happened. Turns out there's a police report floating someplace that says that an ambulance was driving down I-5 at 3:30 in the morning. I-5 is the main highway that goes right through California, right up in north and south in California. It says that I was stumbling in the middle of the I-5 at 3:30 in the morning with a wrecked truck over on the side on the median. And they stopped and they packaged me up, and on their way out they called a tow truck. And the note says the tow truck came and packaged up the truck, and on their way out they called the Highway Patrol. Highway Patrol gets there, there's no person, I wasn't there, there's no truck, there's no witness, so they wrote a 6-page report with no information. But because of all that, I didn't get in trouble. So I didn't go to jail, I didn't get a DUI, I didn't get in as much trouble as I should have gotten in trouble. I shouldn't have been driving, obviously, right? I'm in a 3-day blackout. obviously shouldn't have been driving. So I spent the next 45 days in the hospital, Navy Hospital, Balboa, San Diego, California, the old hospital, and had surgery. That was actually the day before surgery. My mom was there. She's crying. "No, Chris, don't worry about it. I've already talked to my realtor at home, and we're looking for a house with wheelchair ramps." I was like, "Oh, Jesus, this is not what I need to hear, right?" And I've been in traction in a bed for the last 42 days before surgery, and the doctor's saying that your spine is in such a space, in such an area, that it's really dangerous and you could die. And I told my mom, I said, "Listen, I'm not going to come out of this paralyzed." I said, if I come out of surgery and I'm paralyzed, I've already talked to my friend, go figure the guy I was drinking with, to come in and take me out. I don't want to be paralyzed. I don't want to be in a wheelchair. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You got to understand, I was 42 days in the hospital, completely paralyzed from the nipples down, not able to move on this rotating bed with alligator tongues screwed into my skull, just totally freaked out. Dry, no drugs, no alcohol, freaking out. And I didn't want to live that way. Okay, fast forward a couple days. Surgery was a success. That's a good thing, right? I'm breathing, I'm walking, I'm talking. I've got a lot of peripheral issues from that. March 3rd, 1988 was the night of my accident. It was the last day of my drinking. I didn't have a drink from that night, still to this day. And I told myself after I got out of the hospital, as I was getting out of the hospital, I had this great big huge neck brace on. They didn't put me in the tongs like you see on TV sometimes. This was just like a big splint that came up here, and I was walking around like this. Did that for 4 months. But as I was coming out of the hospital, a yeoman, a little third-class yeoman comes up to me. That's kind of a secretary guy. He said, "Well, I need you to sign these papers." I said, "What are these papers?" He said, "You sign here to go home, or if you don't sign these, then you get to stay in, and we're going to dock your pay to try and pay for your hospital bill since you were drunk driving." I was like, "Well, sign papers. I'm getting the hell out of here." I signed papers and just signed away all of my benefits. No GI Bill, no medical follow-up, no rehab, no VA benefits, nothing. So I can bitch about that all day long. But that's reality. I do have a lot of problems, pain, peripheral pain. My gut's all torn up from hundreds of milligrams of Motrin on a monthly basis. But I'm alive, and I'm breathing, and I'm walking, and I'm talking. Okay, so those are the good things. When I got out of the hospital and I was in this neck brace, I ran into a buddy of mine. Actually, I went to Captain's Mast, and my commanding officer was sending me to DAPA, Drug and Alcohol Prevention Awareness Program. It's the Navy's version of their 90-day inpatient rehab. I was like, "Oh shit, man, I don't want to do this." But I'm being escorted there by my commanding officer and my XO. We're walking up the steps, and as I'm coming up, I got a buddy of mine coming out. Guy I know and I've partied with. He's coming out from a 3-month stay. He had no idea that I was in the hospital. And he's like, "Don't cop to any drugs or they'll kick you out." I said, "Okay, I can do that. I'm not drinking. I haven't drank in 45 days. So I got in there. First 90 days of my real sobriety, I lied. I told him I was an alcoholic, and I don't drink anymore since March 3rd, 1988, and I'm sober. All good. Went to every small group, every meeting, every big group, every speakers meeting, every one of them. Yep, I'm an alcoholic. Yep, I'm clean. Got chips, coins. I'm out, right? But I never copped any drugs. And that looking back now, that was a problem. I look back at that now and think to myself, how can you be sober without being honest with yourself? It doesn't matter what you say or what you say or what he says or what she says. If I can't be honest with myself about everything involved in this, it's not going to help me in the big run. But I didn't drink, so I was sober in my head. Then I got kicked out, or I got released, went home, and I started my trek on sobriety. My version of sobriety. I went on to a nice marijuana and cocaine maintenance. It was fine, right? Every couple of days, no big deal, no big parties, no big blowouts, no blackouts, nothing major, just a little bit here, a little bit here, whatever from people. And it was all good. And I was getting chips. And I was telling these guys before, I got a 1-year coin stoned. 1-year coin. And I was still telling myself, yeah, you haven't had a drink. March 3rd, 1988, baby, you were doing a damn good job. But I kept looking at the people at these tables, and they all had this stupid shit-eating grin on their face. That one right there. And now I used to look at those people and say, how can you be smiling? What the hell are you so happy about? That's stupid. For the whole year that I'm sober. I'm like, what the hell? And my life wasn't getting better. I was still angry, and I was still fighting, and I was still an asshole. I was a complete asshole. I'm still kind of an asshole, but that doesn't change really too easily. But my sponsor made me take my 1-year chip, my 1-year coin, back to the group that I got it from, stand up, similar to a situation like this, and return it, and get a 24-hour coin. That was the hardest thing I ever did at the time, in my head. Because, boy, I knew I was right. March 3rd, 1988, I knew I haven't had a drink. Nobody ever said anything about drugs in these meetings. It was all about alcohol. So I started over. And I did okay. Started working the program. I actually read the steps instead of just reading through them once and then saying I did the steps. I found out that I needed to do the steps generally on a daily basis, because if I don't, then I get all screwed up in my head and go all haywire. And had a good solid 1-year sobriety. And we talked about this just the other day in this room. Alcoholism and addiction and drugs, they're all very insidious in my head. It means they're always there, and they'll always take advantage of you if you let them take advantage of you. And I let them take advantage of me. Thanksgiving morning, 1990, I went down to my basement. I was going to get a serving platter for turkey, of all things. I opened this box, and what's in here? But there's a little film container. And some of you might know what a film container represents in the old days. It was full of weed. And there was a little one-hitter there. And by God, I had no intention of smoking marijuana on Thanksgiving 1990. I had no intention of it, seriously. But I took a breath and realized that I'd already smoked a hit of this pot. It was not even in my head. I didn't stop and say, ooh, that smells good. Maybe I'll try it. Ooh, where's my lighter? I didn't do any of that. It was all right there. Next thing I knew, I'm blowing out this huge hit. And I'm blasted. I'm stoned. This must have been some really good weed that was in this film container. But I was so stoned for that Thanksgiving and blew another year of sobriety without even knowing it, without realizing it. Now, I don't want you to think I'm sitting up here saying it wasn't my fault, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I took that hit. I lit it and I smoked it, and I was stoned. But my point is that if I'm not super careful, those things will slip in behind me, and they're there, and I don't even know I'm doing it. And that scared the crap out of me. So I was like, I just blew a whole year of sobriety. It was a hard year. It was a good year. It was a good, solid year of sobriety. And that's my new sobriety date, Thanksgiving, right? Changes every year. Everybody says, well, what was the date? I have no idea. It was 1990. So now it's Thanksgiving every year. But I have to be really careful. I shared these tables again the other day that 12 years into that nice, strong sobriety that I've got now. I walked around the corner at the grocery store, and there's my cocaine dealer standing there. And he goes like this. And I just about passed out. My knees buckled. I got a cold sweat. I started sweating my pits. I was like, oh, shit. And I left my cart, turned around, walked out, and went to a meeting. That's how close that was. He had it. He knew I wanted it, and he would have gotten me in the parking lot. But I made a choice. I made a choice that time to say, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to get the hell out. I'm going to go to a meeting and talk to people I need to talk to, because that's where my sobriety is now. That's what changed. So I'm supposed to talk about how it was, what happened, and what it's like now. What happened was I got honest with myself. And reality is that if I drink or drug or anything addictive, I'm in shit trouble. We talked about casinos the other day. I've been in a casino one time. I lost $185 in 13 minutes. And it scared me as bad as the cocaine did, because I'm afraid I'm going to come out of there without my mortgage. Okay? I obviously am addicted to food, right? But some of those addictions I can't go near. If I do, I get in trouble real fast, real fast. I got some good sponsors. Through sponsors throughout this time period. About that same time frame, about 12 years ago, right after that cocaine incident, not 12 years ago, but 12 years in, I started going to this group in Grandview, Missouri. And it was about 15 miles from my house, because the town I was living in, I used to joke, they don't have drunks there because they don't have meetings. You have to go to the town next door to go to a meeting. And I hooked up with these guys that became my best friends for a long time. We used to call ourselves the Addicted Triad. There was 3 of us, right? My friend Scott had the most time. He beat me by 1 year. And my friend Dan was 1 year behind me. And got through a lot of stuff with them. Reality is that when I'm sober, bad things still happen. That's life. They still happen. They still happen to all of us. I'm trying to use I statements here. Can you tell? I really am trying. Divorce. Found out my wife had an affair. Oh my God. The first thing that came out of my face to my friend Scott, well, hell, now I can drink. And I thought he was going to punch me. And he probably should have. Because that was the first thought that came out of my head. I don't know why. I had 12 years sobriety. I wasn't sober for my wife. But at the time, that's what came into my head. That's how my mind works. It's very disjointed and altered, even sober. But I didn't drink. I didn't do any drugs. And I actually sat for about 22 hours in our home group table with the 3 of us were there. And that was back when you could smoke, and this place was just, and we sat there and we just hashed it out. And I didn't drink. And I realized that's what I needed. I need somebody to talk to, and I need somebody to laugh with. I need somebody to sit with. I need somebody to call to do these things, because these things are the ones that are keeping me sober and keeping my friends sober. But bad things happen to everybody throughout this process. The year after that, my friend Scott, who had 1 year longer than me, and 2 years younger than Danny, and I feel really useless about this. In one day, he lost his wife, his house, his horse, his Harley Davidson, his restaurant, and 13 years sobriety. One day. He didn't call me. He didn't call Dan either. But we found out the next day. And it freaked us all out because it can happen if you're not careful. If I'm not careful, that can happen. Scott has 6 years now. He also had a stroke 2 years ago, so now he's in a wheelchair and he's altered, right? Danny still has a year behind me, which is good. So every year that I celebrate and get a new coin, I drill a hole in my old coin and hand it to him on a little chain, and he carries it around. He carries my old coins around with him. So I've still got to send my coin to him in Kansas City. Last two Thursdays ago, 14 days ago, I guess, I celebrated 30 years sobriety here at this club, and it was different. It was nice because I got real complacent in Kansas City. I haven't been to a regular meeting, and my home group got very complicated and very. If you let business affairs rule a home group, it gets really disjointed. So I just backed off. Hadn't been to a meeting on a regular basis there for 5 years. But every Thanksgiving, by God, I dropped off a pumpkin pie. You got a pumpkin pie 2 weeks ago, didn't you? Yeah. Good. My daughter called me on Thanksgiving and she said, "Dad, do I need to go buy a pumpkin pie and take it to Grassroots?" I said, that was my old home group in Granby. Because she used to go with me to drop off the pumpkin pies. Ever since she was a little bitty, we'd be going to my aunt's house for dinner or my mom's house or whatever. Well, we got to stop here and drop off this pie. And she remembered, so it was nice. My point in starting this conversation, this part of the conversation, was that when I got here to Prescott, and I have to say Prescott, not Prescott. I've been corrected on that quite a few times. Hey, I'm from Missouri. It's Prescott. Anyway, I got down here and I was angry. I had surgery recently in my shoulder for a workers' comp injury, so I haven't worked in 6 months. I'm only getting a fraction of my salary because of workers' comp insurance, and I was just pissed. Kind of an asshole. I was a real asshole to my girlfriend, which I'm very lucky for. We've been together 5 years now, and she's a really big part of my life and a very special part of my life. But because I couldn't leave Kansas City when we had planned on it, I was in surgery, rehab, and then the surgeon's like, "Oh, you got to stay here. I got to see you every week," and all this. She moved to Prescott, Arizona, in my new house, and I was in Kansas City staying on my dad's couch. I was like, son of a, So she was here for almost 2 months by herself, looking for a job, unloading boxes, doing all this hard work, and I'm up there getting resentments because I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be here. Fast forward a month, when I get down here, I walk in the door, and I tell her, "Man, it's like, I've been here a week. I feel like I'm on vacation. I just bought this house. I feel like I'm on vacation. I feel like I moved into her house." And I got pissed. I was like, son of a bitch. I was mad. I don't remember when I first got here, I was really kind of mad. I was like, there's something not right in my head right now. What in the hell's going on? And guess what I did? I came to a new meeting in these rooms, in this building. And I've been coming, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week since then. So, I'm not angry anymore. I'm glad that she unloaded all the boxes. Great. Saves my shoulder, right? Hopefully my surgeon does my telehealth visit next Monday and releases me so I can go back to work. That would be a wonderful thing. I know it doesn't sound like a wonderful thing, but when you've been not working for 6 months, I've been sitting around watching too many damn Jerry Springers on TV or something. I don't really watch that, but I watch crap on TV. So, but right now it's good, and it's been good for a while. So I've got to be careful when these kind of things come up in my head. When I'm not doing these things and talking to you people, then my head goes really weird, and that's when I get angry, and I was pissed that she was living here in my house and I wasn't here, and she put this couch over here and I wanted the couch over there. That's all bullshit. That's all stuff that is my head trying to take control. And I don't have control. I made that very clear March 3rd, 1988, right? So it's good. I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad I'm going to meetings. That's what I needed to kind of get my head around things. I'm still angry sometimes. I'm still an asshole sometimes. Ask Myra, maybe more than sometimes. I try not to be. I really do try not to be. But these meetings are helping me figure out why I still need to be here 5 times a week, 6 times a week. So I met some really good people. I've really appreciated it. Trying to keep in touch with my friends in Kansas City, but it's hard because we're 1,500 miles away. So I'm making new friends, and got new phone numbers. That's what I need. If I don't have that support system, and if I don't have that type of backup, then these things, I won't do this by myself. Ultimately, I won't. I need support of a group like this. Now, I'll read through the steps every day, and I'll do the steps in my head every day. But if I don't come into a meeting and reinforce those steps, they're going to go away. I might be a little bit early, but I'm going to close with so this is my original AA book. For those of you who haven't seen one like this, it's not like the 2 new volumes. But I got this cover in California when I first went to meetings in San Diego after I got out of treatment. But this is from my daughter. This is so my kids, my son and my daughter have both been involved with this from day one, because I was sober when they were born. So they know I can be an asshole too. Page 449 is the paragraph I needed to hear from day one. And I needed to hear it last week, and I needed to hear it tonight. So I'm going to read it tonight before I close and before I let whatever needs else happen with the rest of the meeting. This is page 449, Alcoholics Anonymous, Doctors, Alcoholic, and Addict. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. That's a key sentence to me. Nothing happens by mistake. The more I try and manage that and rule it, and it just doesn't work for me, right? Until I could accept alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. So it all comes back to me and how I deal with my sobriety. And the way I deal with that is my steps, traditions, my literature. This is my original literature. Sorry, I'm an old school asshole. I don't like the new version because I can't find anything that I used to read. I apologize. But what I need mostly is these rooms. And can I just see a show of hands? Is anybody here for the first 30 days in their sobriety? You guys are what's keeping me here. You really are. And I know that sounds funny. I need you to be here for my sobriety. That doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and lecture you or try and tell you what to do or try and blow smoke up your ass or any of that kind of stuff. But when I hear your story, that reminds me of why I'm here and why I need to stay here. That's just kind of the way I work in my head. So I appreciate all of you being here, especially all you newcomers. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks.
All right, let's give him another big hand for our speaker tonight.